my last video, I showed you how I did the front axle 8-lug conversion on my Bronco. In this video, I'm going to show you the rear axle conversion to 8-lug using a 14 bolt. Okay, to start, I'll address why I picked the 14 bolt rear axle over any other rear axle. I know what's popular with Ford owners is swapping in a Sterling. But why I got the 14 bolt over the Sterling is really because it was cheap. I paid about $100 for this rear end, and it came with 410 gears. Instead of re-gearing and paying to re-gear my truck, I think it was more economical for me to purchase a rear end. Also, they're strong. They're really beefy. I think the reputation speaks for themselves. 1-ton rear axle, 10.5-inch ring gear, full float axles, which basically means that the axle shafts themselves don't support the truck. They only really do one job, and that's transfer power from the differential to the wheels. They're easy to work on, and really there are lots of aftermarket support for the 14 bolt. Let's start by cleaning up the rear end. So I had to remove all the shock tabs, all the spring perches from the 14 bolt to prepare to swap into my Bronco. I bought a axle install kit from Ruff Stuff Specialties. It came with new perches that fit the width of the spring that I have. It also came with U-bolt and spring plate. Everything you need to get started. In this video you'll see my buddy James who came over and helped me remove these. I didn't have an acetylene torch, but luckily he did. Made quick work of this. I still did spend quite a bit of time grinding to make everything smooth. Alright, here is the latest and greatest on the axle swap. So I cut off the brackets, grinding them clean, and now pulling the drums off so we can do a disc brake conversion. Just got the hub apart, or getting the hub apart. The current 8.8 has been almost fully removed. Just have the drive shaft and the brake line, which you can see right there. After we remove those, then we can slide out the axle, and then we can slide this under there and mount the new perches. So yeah, all's going well. Alright, so here's where I left off. Sorry I didn't get some of this on camera, but I have the 14 bolt axle more or less mocked up. We just need to get the perches welded on, get everything aligned, throw the disc brakes on, throw the axles back in, put fluid in it, and be good to go. I guess I forgot to mention weld on some shock tabs to mount the shocks, as well as get the new driveline put in place. I'm having a custom driveline made. I'm going to measure everything after it's all mocked up and then go from there. So here is the 14 bolt rear hub. I did knock out the wheel studs and took it off of the drum brakes, as we're going to be getting rid of the drum brakes in favor of disc brakes. I'll have a complete part list below, but here is the here's a hub before I removed the studs and separated the drum from the hub. I'm gonna go ahead now and show you how I do that. So the best way I found to do this is to use a sledgehammer and a punch. This is like 1.25 inch piece of metal, solid stock, and really just use a vice grip so your hands aren't in the way, and then go to town. Okay, so it's time to mount the new wheel studs. These are Dorman 610 194s. They're very similar to the factory bolt, except a little bit longer. This is going to help with mounting the wheel, as when you do the disc brake conversion, it tends to leave the wheel mounting surface a little bit short. So this will remedy that with the slightly longer studs. What you want to do is flip the hub over and then place the disc in like that. And then you want to start dropping in these wheel studs after you've aligned everything. And now you're ready to knock them in. So what I do is a little trick that I've used, basically a vice grips with a grade 8 bolt. Use it as a punch. So, missing one. So I just do a star pattern knocking them in. So as you can tell, they're not all the way in yet, but that's just how I get it started. Then I use a bigger hammer to finish the job. You can tell when it's down all the way because the hammer actually bounces back. That's good. No more wiggle. All done. It's ready to be mounted back onto the wheel. Alright, so here we are. Hub almost assembled, mocked up, no caliper yet. Waiting for the caliper, but do have the caliper bracket on there. I have the shock tabs tacked. Let's see if it'll focus. Tacked. I have the spring perches tacked. Get some light. Both sides are done that way. Pinion angle set. This is not the angle. This is almost at full droop. Still being supported by the jack. Let me pull this off. Here is the caliper bracket from Ruff Stuff Specialties. Very nice. Here's the spring perches, as well as the shackle plate, or the U-bolt plate. I had to drill it a little bit bigger because I have a bigger center bolt there. I had to drill it to 3/4 of an inch. But yeah, it's coming together. Alright, so now it's time to reassemble the hub. Put it back onto the spindle. I'm just gonna put a little bit of grease. Alright, let's get the hub on. Okay. Alright, so next goes the lock ring. There's a little key on it, so I've got to make sure it's on there in the correct direction. There are two of these. I believe they're exactly the same. So then goes this doesn't actually go on there super tight. I believe the technical specification is 50 foot-pounds, and then just to seat the bearing and then back it off. I'm going to back it off. It was not on there very tight at all when I took it off. Now goes this little deal. Another lock ring. These little claws actually get folded into this little locking nut and preventing it from spinning, coming loose. I'm just gonna reuse this. I grabbed a screwdriver and I'm just gonna turn this little guy in. That'll prevent the nut from backing out, and our hub is on. So I bent one of those little fingers in. Could probably bend this one in as well, but I'm just going to do one. That just prevents this from backing out. Okay, so onto the rear brake setup. So I got these custom lines built for this 14 bolt setup. I will use the factory, if you will, extended brake line that I got for the Bronco. I'm going to reuse the extended brake line and just adapt these custom lines to the calipers. These are the calipers I got. Here's the part number, 18-4122 and 4123. They are about $18.99 at the local O'Reilly's with a $15 core. So pretty cheap caliper. Okay, so I ran into a problem. So if you look at the rear brake caliper bracket and also the leaf spring plate, you'll see that the standard bolt actually won't go in. They're just a really bad angle. Ideally, it's hard to see here, but ideally this would be lower, so this could go straight in. It won't go in, as you can see. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually reduce the thickness of the head of the bolt. And I did that by putting this into the drill press and then using a file to take down some of the material. That gave it a slightly better angle, but still I could probably hammer it in, but I don't want to. So what I'm going to do is use a Dremel and I'm going to notch out this little section just a hair, so it will allow for me to service this So like I said, I could probably hammer it in, but would probably be better if I notched it out, so if I ever needed to take the bolt out, I could do so easily. So as you can see, I notched this out a little bit to be able to make room for the bolt head. And now I can service the brakes because this is easily removable. Goes right in and right out. Cool. Now I'll bolt the caliper on. Here's a shot of the rear axle installed and in its final resting place. There are still lots of little things to do, like tidy up the brake line mounting, which is basically replacing those zip ties with some hose clamps. The braking is a little bit different because I did do a disc brake conversion, so I do plan on upgrading the brake system, the brake booster. Here's a shot of the driver's side shock mount as well as the passenger side shock mount. I do have plans to redo some of the exhaust, have the exhaust exit out in front of the tire. You'll see that in another video. Here's a shot of the driveline and the angle of the driveline. I've driven this about 50 miles and have had no vibration or no issues. I am running these fenders in 37s for the first time, so I do need to do some trimming so I don't have any kind of impact if I am at full bump. As always, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe if you want to keep up with my build, and we'll see you on the next project.